Now, there's been a massive shift in my playing. So when I started in the mid-90s, I got into shred music and fast playing. And I thought that, I have 24 frets or whatever. I had to use all of them in order to be creative. And the more frets you use, the more notes you use, the better. And I had all these patterns to look at. And now I'm realizing that all I need is this. Hey, if we haven't met before, hello, my name is David. I've been teaching guitar professionally for the last 30 plus years. Love doing it. And this channel is all about helping you express yourself musically, develop your musical personality a little bit better. I want to talk about that thing, this tiny little area of the fretboard that I've been focusing on so much. Now, when I say that area of the fretboard, it could really be any area of the fretboard, but it's got to be super narrow. And that's where magic happens. Check this out. We're going to take a scale, let's say A Aeolian, for example. Here's the first position. It's quite narrow. It's within the caged position. It's the E position of the cage system. If all of that is nonsense, don't worry about it. It's just a narrow position. We're going to make this even narrower. See, we took that position, made it narrow horizontally. We're going to make it narrow vertically. So we're just going to focus on a few strings. Let's take maybe strings 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's it. So take that scale within those strings. That's all we're gonna work with. It could be any other scale, but it's gotta be narrow, just a few notes. That super narrow shape can feel quite limiting sometimes. It did for me when I started playing, and that's why for so many years I focused on memorizing all those patterns, playing all over the fretboard, because I thought that's the way to keep the audience interested. I never really focused on the nuggets I could find within a narrow shape. We're gonna do that. We're gonna consider a phrase, for example, this one, to be a mini story. It's got a beginning, an end, it's got movement. And now I'm gonna try to maybe add some variations to that story. Instead of reading it from a book, maybe I'm gonna whisper it to my kid. Like a secret. Okay, that's interesting. It's different. Got my phrase here. Sounds a little different from. Or maybe I'm gonna start my story, and then the very last piece of the story, I'm gonna say it like a really secret. It's about contrast. That last note was really low, but you had to pay attention. And when you pay attention to something, when you try to take something in and you really work for it, that thing becomes more valuable. All right, I know it's a little philosophical or weird. I promise it's not. It's gonna trigger some new ideas because we have to rely on things like that. We can't rely on, tons of shapes here. We're very limited. All right, let's continue. We've got our opening statement. And you consider that that is maybe chapter 1 of my story. We're introducing the character. That character is gonna do something, but I want the second chapter to be read in a way that you automatically understand the first chapter. Well, that means that I've got to use kind of the same vocabulary. Maybe if my first chapter, my first theme was this, my second chapter is gonna have some pieces of things that come from that first chapter. So maybe some of the notes or some of the movements. Okay, you feel the match, right? I've got my opening chapter. And then the second one. They're coherent. It's not like I started my chapter. And then I've got, that's too far out. That's gonna be chapter 10 of the book. Continuity. Really quick, we're gonna continue with this concept in just a second. If you're watching this video, it probably means that you're not fully content with your guitar playing, and that's great. There's always room for improvement. But if you have been playing for over 10 years and you still feel stuck, it means that there's one thing holding you back. I just left in the description of this video a link to a quiz. It'll tell you exactly what's keeping you stuck, how to fix it, completely free. After this video, I highly recommend you do that. But for now, let's get back into it. Now, maybe That second chapter is going to be the same exact chapter that we had earlier, the first one, but seen from the perspective of, I don't know, a little girl dreaming about it. Okay, it's the same story, but through a different lens. Okay. I added a detail to my story now. I had a statement. Like, well, okay, we got that, but like, what color was the robe? Oh, I'll tell you. It's that color right there. I added a little detail. As I'm doing this, I'm not thinking about scales, licks, patterns. I'm utilizing those notes as pieces of information, words, and I'm tweaking them, I'm molding them to make something more personal. This is not something that you should do all the time, because then you're going to sound like, I don't know, it's going to sound okay, but you're not going to be able to play with other people. But every once in a while, practice that kind of thing. Find a shape and make a story with it. Now here we took the melodic approach, right? Where we're playing single notes. But if you visualize those patterns, you can find a whole bunch of chords within those, right? Chords are 2 or more notes played together. I know. I had a whole conversation a few weeks ago on the channel that a chord is 3 or more notes, and I agree. Kind of. I like to see them too. I don't know. Anyways, it doesn't matter. 2 or more notes played together, you can extract those from little shapes. If we go back to our shape that we had here, I could combine several of these notes. Here's my full shape. Together. Maybe this one, this one, this one. That's a chord that is extracted from my shape. So I could use that in my story. Now there's others. There's this one. You can also find this one. Stories, developments, using part of your creative brain in a different way. This is kind of set in stone in a way, right? Those patterns, those licks and things like that, you can visualize them, but you can mold them to make them more personal. It's just like when I'm talking to you now. I'm using words from the dictionary most of the time, but I'm still using them in my own way. I'm saying them in my own way. And it's something that you're probably missing in your playing. I know that I've missed that for a good 20 years of my playing, where I was trying to focus on all the patterns, the licks, the techniques and things like that. And I was missing out on the joy of self-expression. That's where it starts. Now, we didn't even touch on some of the techniques you can add to craft your story, but you really have to approach those. I'm talking about, bends, slides, all those things. You've got to approach it with that lens of creativity and that storytelling lens. Approach it like a kid. It's got this box of Legos and is building something without following the rules. Do that every once in a while. Again, I want to stress that this is probably not the kind of thing you want to do each time you practice guitar. You want to complement with some more scholar things. Set in stone, memorizing some patterns, some shapes, so that you have the vocabulary that you can use when you're jamming with other people. But adding this to your practice, I think is really going to help you express yourself a little bit more. Now, I realize that for those of you who have been playing for decades, it can be a little bit difficult to get into that kind of playing because you're so used to, the patterns, the licks, and things like that. If that's you, there's one thing you need to do. Answer these questions right here, and I'll show you exactly the one thing that's holding you back. It's completely free. There's no catch. Answer the questions, and I'll tell you what to practice, and I'll show you exactly how to practice. Completely free. Click right here. Thanks for watching this. I'll see you right there.